Hello, dear friends. Welcome to your weekly energy report for the week of September 13th. Whoa. I don't know where to begin. Actually, I can just tell you that it feels like being in some kind of spiritual soup of darkness and light all at once. And the feeling from a life perspective is that you're stirring the pot endlessly and questioning what the purpose of that is. Is it to blend those elements? Is it to separate them? Do they ever blend? Questions more from a metaphysical perspective. I understand that that might not be as straightforward as it sounds, so something to think about. This candle is just here because I've decided this week we need some fire magic, and hopefully that will, if you are watching rather than just listening, that will give you a little bit of a focus, meditative focus through this week. I have no idea where these messages are going to go. I haven't pulled any cards yet. I woke up with a cranial fog, and my sinuses are slightly congested, so hopefully I don't sound too nasal. I am doing this without headphones in or a microphone. I'm using my iPad microphone because as things stand currently with my peripheral equipment, this is probably the best sound quality that I can actually give in just projecting my voice. I hope that makes sense. So, get into the astrology of this week ahead. What do we have? Okay, so we've just come out of the moon being in Scorpio. So this weekend you may have felt some of those, I want to say darker, but I really mean it's the recesses of the mind and the soul journey, death, birth, oppositions of lightness and darkness, and our concept of life energy being challenged towards the spiritual, but into the unknown more than anything. So if you'd felt a little bit confused, that would make sense in the lead up to the biggest event of this week, which takes place on Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on where you are in the world, which is a Sun opposition to Neptune. The Sun being in Virgo, Neptune being in Pisces. You have this opposition. Think about what that is. Neptune in Pisces is, of course, deep spirituality, mysticism, but also the belief systems that are illusory or based on something that is not the fabric of our lives, but Hierophant-based concepts, traditions, neural pathways that have been formed without information, without informed consent. That's basically what beliefs essentially are, Faith in its higher manifestation, Neptune in Pisces. So we have that in opposition to the Sun in Virgo, which is all about our systematic approach to informing our experience with details, with discipline, with structure, not in the Capricorn way, but more in the striving for perfection, striving for fulfillment, striving for an end goal, a solidified end goal. And it's earth energy, so of course it's all about grounding that into something. So what does the opposition mean? The opposition always sounds terrifying. It's not a square. Squares are much more difficult. But oppositions basically bring things to our conscious awareness in order for them to be examined. We usually do experience some type of polarity in that forces us to level up, because I mean that is the process of temperance, of course. So think of those two ends of the spectrum: systematized thinking, lifestyle, goals, confronted with the ebb and flow of belief, faith, what's illusory, what is fact, what is mysticism, what is mystery, what is myth. All of these things, combined, and there's a tempering process that is taking place in order to move us forward on our spiritual and material journeys. That's going to be the major influence of this week. Beyond that, Venus has moved into Scorpio. I'm not a fan of saying that, that's not a dignified place for it. In fact, on the contrary, Scorpio energy can be, it's our sexuality as well. It is our desire for connection in the unknown aspects of ourselves, the transcendental, the aspects of ourselves that we don't harness with control in order for them to expand more, so Venus being the things that we love, beauty, love, joy, joyful experiences, these under the guidance and influence of Scorpio become focused beyond the mundane, for sure. And of course, as that is water energy, there's also a bridge there to be taken into consideration, as we are also, of course, not in this week ahead, but literally at the beginning of the following week, next Monday, which will be, what is that, 20th, I think, is the full moon in Pisces, which is always a spiritual, emotional completion. So, I don't know what's been going on in your life, but certainly for me, in my everyday existence, there have been a lot of challenges that have taken an enormous toll on my mental grounding. And these challenges I've found myself facing consciously, in the sense that I have to remind myself that I have the ability to inform the experience with my own perception of the experience. In other words, if I am drawn to dark thoughts, if I frame things in a way that is based on fear or negativity, I manifest that version of that experience. Now, it's difficult to always know where the delineation of responsibility lies in that. I mean, essentially, we're accountable for everything, right? I mean, if it's our life, we have to be held accountable for it. Whether we allowed it to happen or whether we allow it to still affect us, these are our own responsibilities. We always have the capacity to take action, but sometimes things are very overwhelming and it's not as easy to do that. So that has been the struggle for me, has been figuring out ways of turning my frustration, my feeling of being overwhelmed, into a pathway of information, of informed consent, of evolved perspective, of completion and wholeness. That process, it takes a lot of time and energy. So I would imagine that the full moon in Pisces will reveal to us the emotional blockages that have held us in those patterns of challenge and will offer us the opportunity in ceremony, in heart-held consciousness, to release those blockages and those patterns. So, on that note, I guess I should start pulling cards. I'm not sure how many we'll do this week. I'm not sure exactly how we'll do it, but probably the same way as I always do. And we'll start with a spirit animal oracle card if one ever wishes to come out, of course, on the floor. And we get, oh, well, great. Well, that would make sense coming up to a full moon in Pisces. Swan Spirit, time for a deep dive. That is number 60. And of course, I cannot read with my glasses on. With their graceful long necks, swans are able to reach into the depths. When Swan Spirit arrives, you are called to take a deep dive beyond what is easily available on the surface. You may think you know what is best for you now, but take the plunge into the depths of your awareness, for there is knowledge you are not aware of, and great treasures to discover. Very Venus in Scorpio, and very full moon in Pisces. Deeper understanding awaits you, and a perspective that comes from greater self-knowledge is what you need right now to better understand a situation or a relationship. As you come to know yourself more intimately, so too will you come to better know others. So Swan Spirit asks you to go beyond the surface of what is happening between you and others and resist the temptation to judge by superficial appearances. Know there is a much deeper potential for loving connections, forgiveness, and mutual understanding. Choose to dive deep into your why, asking the deeper question of yourself. You are led by the grace of Swan Spirit. And again, I can also say I've been feeling very challenged by certain relationships in my life, not work relationships. And I shouldn't say relationships, it's actually just one. But that's sort of representative of a vibe in my life. And so I imagine, depending on where these aspects planetarily are in your chart, we're going to be focused on different things. Like for you, it may be your family. For me, it's my friendships and how I relate to others in my, what I receive from those and what I give, of course. And I struggle with that, and I've talked about this on the channel before, and it's not because I feel like having a therapy session with you guys. It sort of is on a certain level to externalize things, and hopefully you find some commonality or some understanding in there of your own experience. But I don't like falling into the endless narrative of the empath versus the narcissist, because from a psychological perspective, that's really like coffee table psychology. The fact of the matter is that if you are an empath, you have had narcissistic tendencies, you may still have them, that we have to overcome. That's part of the earthly experience for us. In the same way as a narcissist does, underneath it all have the capacity for empathy, but they are blocked from it, and it just so happens on top of that our very sick society reinforces the narcissist narrative. So we end up with this magnification of light versus dark, in that sense, of victim versus perpetrator, which we don't want to be in, because we're moving out of that Piscean age, right? So this is what we have to grapple with. This is what is always a struggle for us when we find ourselves faced with narcissism in others, and when we recognize that the narcissism in others triggers a narcissistic wound in ourselves that we're still healing from, and that in turn means that there is turmoil within that forces us to churn and eventually level up. We've talked about this before, the idea of the conscious experience then being absorbed into the subconscious mind and spirit, and going into us, processing, and then coming back out into a new conscious experience. Well, when we have a full moon in Pisces coming up, you can guarantee that there is going to be that level of not so much a purge, but a metaphysical, spiritual challenge to how we define our mental and spiritual structures and emotional structures. That's sort of, for me, that's the bridge between the mental and the spiritual anyway. So the protection message, because I imagine it could be difficult for some of us, is the following. Don't talk yourself into diving deep into something just because you see the potential of things instead of what they really are now. The necessary work and patience involved may not be the best use of your energy. Have you seen the potential in someone and think that if you love and support them, they will become the person who knows you love them beyond all others? Have you stepped into an opportunity that you know feels too good to be true and might not turn out the way that you hope? Now is not a time for selective, limited perception that can lead to misjudgment. Instead, this is a time for going deep and being honest about what you find as you explore the depths. Have no fear, for whatever you find below will help you love and understand yourself and others and make better choices. Can you sense one spirit calling you to dive deep and resurface to choose again? Again, not necessarily the truth that you have to go back in and reassess the choices that you've made. We'll have plenty of that. In fact, we're consumed by that at present, and even more so in the near future, because we have so many retrograde planets, and that's pretty much the case for the next 2 months. We have Mercury going retrograde at the end of this month of September, so the deep dive is also indicative of that part of the process. We have to do a deep dive when we are in retrograde season. And there's a comforting to that. I hate the negativity surrounding retrogrades. The idea that somehow they are a hindrance or a hurdle or whatever. They are not. In fact, they are a time of respite in a certain way, because they offer us the opportunity to revisit the journey that we've been on in the acceleration, the forward, or at least, again, I can't get into time, space, restrictions, but, the idea of advancement, as planets orbit, there's an intensification in that process. So retrogrades give us the opportunity to revisit those degrees that we have crossed and confronted and experienced and absorbed, for better digestion, for more integration and assimilation. This is a very important part of the leveling up, and so we have to be really thankful for retrogrades in many ways, in all ways actually. And I know, blah, 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 you're not supposed to make new plans or sign contracts when Mercury is retrograde. I do not believe in any of that stuff. I honestly really do not. There can be interference, there can be a slowing down of the process or whatever else, but again, everything is divinely fated as far as I'm concerned. It's all in alignment with what's needed, so why question it? You can't put things on hold sometimes in life. Sometimes you can. If you do, then that's up to you. But, there's also the old adage, don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. So is that really something that you want to fall into, Two cards that jump out at me from this deck. We have interesting, to go along with the deep dive, leadership and openness. There's that full moon, by the way. In fact, those are very complimentary, those cards, aren't they? Let's read those. I don't usually read from this oracle book, but why not? Leadership. represented by the North Star here. In Western culture, we wish upon a star because the stars represent all that is illuminating and enchanting. They symbolize aspiration, illumination, inspiration, imagination, and wonder. Native people used the stars to find their way in the night sky. The North Star was often used as a kind of compass to make sure one was going in the right direction. The North Star symbolizes direction and guidance. It is a guiding light for those who can't find their way. It's one of the brightest stars in its constellation. The sacred landscape wants you to know that just as the North Star is a beacon for travelers in the dark of the night, you are a beacon for others. It's time to step into the light and take your leadership role. You are a teacher, steward, guardian, and healer, a true leader. Own these gifts. Come into the light. Don't hold back. Let the world see your light. The greatest leaders are those who know how to serve and act as stepping stones for others to reach their dreams. If you have been hiding in the background, it's time to break out and become the light for others. Through this, your star shines brighter. And that could not be more apt for myself, because in all frankness, there is a great deal of ego involved in the complications that arise, for example, in a workplace, or when we have a creative collaborative project, or when we're dealing with family or our friends or whatever. It's like, how do we step back from our own narcissistic wounds, our own ego pain body, when we are triggered by somebody else's behavior, somebody else's actions, somebody else's lack of regard for our feelings? Do we shut down? Do we get in our own way as a result of that? Do we self-sabotage, or sabotage others? Do we gossip? Do we lash out at people behind their backs, to their faces? All of these things are not wrong or right. They're just indications of an imbalance in our lives, because ultimately, when we are content, when we are in alignment with our own worth, and we understand that, and we understand that we are light to so many, to anyone who crosses our path, or whose path we cross, we don't question the motives. We don't internalize somebody else's response or behavior. We understand that they're coming from a place of lack or a place of unknowingness, and therefore they require a little bit more light. And we are there to give that light to them. And I'm not encouraging you to spiritually bypass or submit to abuse or anything like that. That there's a knowingness inside of you when something is totally off the rails. I am specifically talking about the choices we make that hinder our own progress as a result of how we internalize the experience of somebody else. So something to think about, to remember that is what leadership is. Leadership is not getting to the top. Leadership is not steamrolling everybody else and proving that you're right and everyone else is wrong. Leadership is that in spite of the chaos, the responses of the pain body of others, that we maintain our light, which is very hard to do, of course, and probably requires a full moon in Pisces to get us there, and openness. So I'm reading both of these this week. Secrets of the moon. The cycles of the moon affect every aspect of our life. The cyclical magnetic pull regulates the tides as it acts on our planet's waters. The moon even affects the monthly cycles of women. It's not an accident that a woman's cycle and the cycle of the moon are approximately the same amount of time. In native cultures, when women lived in nature, it was not uncommon for them to menstruate during the new moon and ovulate around the full moon. It was believed that menstruation was the time that a woman had to be still, put her everyday labors aside, and renew. For all people, the dark of the moon was a time to incubate ideas, watch nocturnal dreams for signs, and be still. In modern life, we as a culture don't honor these natural cycles often enough, and as a result, our lives are usually bereft of this important time of rejuvenation. When you receive this card, be open to receiving signs. Be still, do nothing, be open, breathe, be the light. Relax completely and thoroughly. Incubate your dreams for the future. If you are trying to make a decision, take the time to watch for signs and listen to the whispers of the universe. Watch your dreams for messages regarding the situation. Become the sacred watcher. Observe life as it unfolds rather than becoming engaged in it. Be open to what the universe has in store for you. Be receptive to messages from your soul. This card can also be the bringer of sacred wonders in your life. Miracles can show up in ways you didn't expect. And I do have to say that I have that strong sense that miracles do abound in this energy that we are heading into. It's hard to remember that because sometimes it feels like we get into the chaos of, probably why I had this horrible cranial headache and fog and sinus congestion. I mean, aside from perhaps poor dietary choices yesterday. Not that bad, but not great either. I ate sushi, and honestly, I don't know why, but sushi really messes with me, my digestive system now, so. Okay, focus. You notice that I have to tell myself that on a regular basis, because I go off on weird tangents, especially when I have that brain fog. And I kind of hold the brain fog a lot of the time for these readings because it means that I have less capacity to internalize my process. Okay. I've seen it 3 times now. I guess it did want to come out. Our Sufi wisdom card of the week. Face your fears. Farewell to fear, phantoms. Enter the lion's jungle. Don't think about getting hurt. Fearful thoughts are simply phantoms of the mind. No one is harmed in this jungle. Everything is compassion and love. Your fear is what holds you back like a bar behind the door. Rumi. You are in the presence of divine kindness and generosity. Allow it to lift you beyond ordinary consciousness. Open your heart to the gift of faith and trust in divine protection. When you become aware of the presence of the divine joy giver within you, you awaken to the spiritual power that is already embedded in your nature and recognize that you have been created for joy that can lift you beyond your limitations. If the world seems like an unfriendly place to you, it may be that you're lost in mundane details. Important to remember that. Think about that. If the world seems like an unfriendly place to you, it may be that you are lost in mundane details. Again, that's the essence of being the light, is that you transcend those mundane details, right? Accept that pain and struggle are a part of life in the same way that pleasure and joy are. By doing so, you will lessen the tension of fear and the impact of its force upon you. As Rumi points out, life is not harmful to you. It is your fear that makes phantoms in your mind. Love is a creative power, and you are here to live that truth and experience it in its fullness. Dear one, begin to relax in the assurance that only pure love can give. Feel the divine presence of love in your heart for everything and everyone around you. By doing that, you will cause fear to disappear into the sweetness of surrender. Once you feel this connection, you will begin to realize that it is the love that has awakened you. The outer sensations diminish, and you experience the sweetness of bliss and the peace of divine protection. Your mantra for the week, our mantra for the week, is the following. I am removing the idea of failure from my thoughts. I allow the power and courage of love to help me face whatever happens. Again, let's say that together, because it pretty much sums up everything we've talked about thus far. I am removing the idea of failure from my thoughts. I allow the power and courage of love to help me face whatever happens. I'm being very pragmatic this week and putting my cards away as I go because I don't know why in particular. Probably because, no, I don't feel like doing that. Well, just because. Anyway, let's pull some tarot. For this intense week, this intense spiritual week, this intense integration week. What's the word that's coming to my mind is integration. Great. I shouldn't. Oh, great. Oh, God. Okay. Yeah. So much ego stuff to deal with here. I kind of knew that. Nice. Okay, I see how this is going to work. 2 more cards for this flow. Oh. Okay. Not a light week on the horizon, I have to tell you. Oh, it's an awful lot of cards that came out there. I don't think we'll be taking all of those. Spirit, can I just get one more outcome card? The Fool is trying to come out, but okay, good. Okay. I know. Sorry, I need a clarifier on that. I got a clarifier on the outcome card. I do have to say that when I said I wanted a clarifier, twice now the Hangman has come out. So it's basically telling us, you know, fuck you, do the work. I mean, not literally, you know what I mean. In other words, the answer will come to us if we're doing the work. I will take some Osho cards, just because we need some clarity. Interesting. At the very center of our reading, I'll take that as being the core. Again, that ties in very much with leadership. I will reveal all of this when the time comes. Nice! Okay. Okay. I have to get into this because I need to hold this crystal just to give me a little bit more clarity. Because there's a lot to work through and a lot to overcome. What do we have here? Okay, so where are we coming out of? What are we feeling right now? A 9 of Wands opening as the mindset. That pretty much confirms exactly what I'm trying to tell you about what I feel in my head. And not just my head, because I did some shoulder work yesterday that really hurts in my collarbone area. 9 of Swords is a card of feeling overwhelmed and being depressed, being held down, confined, not being able to feel that we have access to our light, that we feel as though we're being extinguished or we're being trapped into a defensiveness, into a lack of inspiration, into a lack of desire and drive. And it's all, these are all ideas, the ones in this image, these are ideas of things that we have built up that all have potential. But sometimes when there's a bunch of them like that, those ideas overwhelm us and then we feel caged in. There's a necessity here to contemplate. And I'll show you why. We'll get there. I'm going to work through these pretty quickly as being almost like mundane messages, because they are all of the mind and the essence, but they do tell an arc the way that I pulled them. Our next card is the Five of Swords. So the Five of Swords is the indication of why we're in that Nine of Wands place, which of course is everything that we've already talked about. It's ego. This is when we feel that we have been wronged. This is when we feel that we have to defend ourselves against, for lack of a better way of putting it, without wanting to fall into an egoic construct in the way that I say, people that are not as powerful as we are. Because the power, again, when you go into that, what we discussed earlier with swan spirit and with leadership, that we have that capacity to lead in our light when we extend ourselves beyond egoic constructs and when we stop playing into the bullshit that other people are attached to in their lives. That's their problem, that's their journey. I shouldn't even say problem, it's just where they're at, right? So we have to move through that. This is the challenge, and I will take one clarifier on that to give maybe a little bit of insight into how that manifests for us in this week ahead. The Eight of Cups. We need to walk away from an emotional concept, an emotional blockage, something that we once experienced as integral to our journey, to the bigger picture, to the way that we saw life and the purpose of life, that no longer speaks to us, that no longer resonates. I can't tell you what that is exactly for you. For me, I can say that it probably is a narrative of blame. Again, moving beyond a narrative of blame does not exonerate and make the cause disappear. It's just understanding that in the grand scheme of things, it's not big enough, it's not worth making big enough to get in your own way, right? That's really what that Eight of Cups is, and especially in response to an egoic wound, or a narcissistic wound. It's like, this is saying, we are leveled up enough that we have to embrace our capacity to know that we're getting in our own way, that there's some emotional construct that holds us back, that prevents us from actually being in the light, from embodying love. And if you don't feel that you're receiving love, and I can often say that that's the way that I egoically fall into a pattern of, is like, I'm not receiving love, I'm not being seen, I'm not, being validated or valued. These are all self-created constructs, because the reality is that it shouldn't really matter to me if I'm like feeling valued or validated. And it's a difficult one, because our entire social construct is built on that in the modern era. But the reminder at the center of our reading is the magician. That magician with his infinity symbol above his head and holding that wand up in the air, or whatever that is, his magic scepter thing. He's calling to the divine in his infinite connection to source, knowing that he doesn't need to actually hold the wand, the sword, the cup, or the pentacle. He has them. Those are his tools. It's the divine flow, as above, so below, that creates his reality. He knows that. So, again, it's a choice of pronoun based on the image, because that looks like a dude to me. But if you are a woman, or you are non-binary, or whatever, you find your own path in that understanding. But this is a global concept for all of us, right? Which in turn then requires a process that is the exact mirror of this is on the other side of the magician, of these energies. You have the Seven of Pentacles not in opposition, well, it is sort of in opposition, in response to the combination of walking away from the egoic narcissistic wound that holds our emotional balance from being fulfilled and honored. The Seven of Pentacles is essentially a card that asks us one question: is it worth it? Is whatever you are doing in your life worth it? Is whatever it is that you are, is blocking you worth it? Like, you have to explore that question. Is the stress that you're experiencing from your work or from your relationship or from over exercising, under eating, overeating, whatever it is, is it worth it? And only you can answer that. You are the divine presence. You are at one with all when you ask yourself that question, because you have the humility to step back from your ego and ask yourself for an honest, authentic answer. And you will know. And if you lie to yourself, you will go back to feeling like this, and that will be the cycle, Let's ask what we're contemplating, in what capacity. I understand that, but at the same time, I feel like we need a little bit of clarification on that. Oh God. Okay, so, no. Can I just get one card, please, for that clarification? Okay. So, we have the Eight of Pentacles here. So, again, this is craftsmanship. This is, the Seven leads to the Eight. When we decide to commit to something, when we decide that we have the understanding of the evolutionary process, we commit to it, and the commitment is the hard work that we have to do in order to get to the Nine of Pentacles, which is self-fulfillment to the degree that then we can share our wealth and our legacy, right? Eventually. So it's a question here. Sorry. It's the direction that we're getting from Spirit here is that in contemplating, is it worth it? Is whatever it is that you have questions about worth it? It leads you to a better understanding of where to commit, what to commit to, what is actually going to move you forward on your journey. Again, which works out to being a perfect mirror to that Nine of Wands influence, egoic need to step away from something. This is the informed way of doing it. Contemplation in a clear mind, embodying light, leads to an understanding of what to eliminate and what to move into and what to cultivate. That is the magician's capacity. So it's actually a pretty uplifting message. It's especially because what we get as our outcome cards were the Two of Wands, which is the informed decision. It's, as opposed to the Two of Swords, which is one where we feel that we don't have the information to make the choice and we have to jump off the cliff and basically live in terror in the process, playing Russian roulette. This is an informed perspective. This is a person who has the understanding that they've already been on the karmic cycle and they have the world. This is just a new leveling up where they carry the essence of the world experience, the world being the last card in the major arcana is what I'm saying, the completion. You hold the completion to make a decision to move into a new informed pathway. Because where do you go? You go from the Ace, you go from the Fool to the Ace of Wands, which is inspiration and ideas in this case, which here then will lead to the Three of Wands, which is the anticipation of, waiting for your ships to come in, the fruits of your labor to come to harvest, and so on and so forth. And the Four of Wands is the foundation. And we actually do have the Four of Wands in our Osho cards as our foundation. So interesting. But when I asked for a clarifier on that Two of Wands, we didn't get it because we haven't done that work. That's what this week is all about. So instead we got the Hangman. The Hangman is the voluntary suspension in time and space for observation, self-observation, analysis of our circumstances, what serves us, what doesn't serve us. It's allowing the divine to enter into our entire being in order to receive the enlightened perspective, to make the correct decisions. Underlying all of this, which gives us the perspective on what this experience is, we have two cards. We have, first of all, the Master, and then we have participation. So let me read the Master to us, which probably will give us an idea of how to move beyond that egoic structure, because it is the world. It's actually beyond the world. It's an extra card in this deck. So I guess the process of major evolution is on the horizon with this leveling up. I don't know how to put that into words. Let's allow Asha to do it for us. The master in Zen is not a master over others, but a master of himself. See, that's what we were saying, right? His every gesture and his every word reflect his enlightened state. He has no private goals, no desire that anything should be other than the way it is. No resistance, right? If you accept everything to be exactly as divine and source want it to be, that makes life a whole lot easier, right? His disciples gather around him not to follow him, but to soak up his presence and be inspired by his example. In his eyes, they find their own truth reflected, and in his silence, they fall more easily into the silence of their own beings. The master welcomes the disciples not because he wants to lead them, but because he has so much to share. Together, they create an energy field that supports each unique individual in finding his or her own light. And what a wonderful thing to be inspired to do, to actually be fully in encouragement of other people's goals and not be in the position of feeling like by encouraging somebody else that they failed to validate you or value what you do consciously or in a way that they were capable or comfortable or secure enough to do, that you don't even take that into consideration. You just keep giving. If you can find such a master, you are blessed. If you cannot, keep on searching. Learn from the teachers and the would-be masters and move on. Karaveti, said Gautam Buddha, keep on moving. Beyond mind, there is an awareness that is intrinsic, that is not given to you by the outside and is not an idea, and there is no experiment up to now that has found any center in the brain which corresponds to awareness. The whole work of meditation is to make you aware of all that is mind and disidentify yourself from it. That very separation is the greatest revolution that can happen to man. Now you can do and act on only that which makes you more joyous, fulfills you, gives you contentment, makes your life a work of art, of beauty. But this is possible only if the master in you is awake. Right now the master is fast asleep, and the mind, the servant, is playing the role of the master. The servant is not even your servant. The servant is created by the outside world. It follows the outside world and its laws. Once your awareness becomes a flame, it burns up the whole slavery that the mind has created. There is no blissfulness more precious than freedom, than being a master of your own destiny. And again, now you can do and act on only that which makes you more joyous, fulfills you, gives you contentment, makes your life a work of art, of beauty. Think about that, and think about what that means outside of an ego structure, because I think that the problem is we get in our own way and we think that when we're exploring those things that we associate those things with ego. And what do those things actually represent to you outside of ego? That is something that the hanged man clearly does in order to make those informed decisions that drive us forward on our karmic journey. Our other card is participation, which is the Four of Wands, which is that foundation card that we want that Two of Wands to lead to. So that's our foundation for the week. So again, it gives us more of an idea of what the journey is. How to do it is the master. Where we're headed is participation. Each figure in this mandala holds the right hand up in an attitude of receiving and the left hand down in an attitude of giving. The whole circle creates a tremendous energy field that takes on the shape of the double dorja, the Tibetan symbol for the thunderbolt. The mandala has a quality like that of the energy field that forms around a Buddha, where all the individuals taking part in the circle make a unique contribution to create a unified and vital whole. It is like a flower, whose wholeness is even more beautiful than the sum of its parts, at the same time enhancing the beauty of each individual petal. You have an opportunity to participate with others now to make your contribution to creating something greater and more beautiful than each of you could manage alone. Your participation will not only nourish you, but will also contribute something precious to the whole. And as I was reading that, I just had a panic attack for a second because I suddenly realized that there's even more work that I have to do today for work that I just feel really overly consumed by, but never mind. Where am I? The King of Pentacles is our outcome. Abundance. That is page 32. Okay, this is our last card. Where we're headed, what the outcome of this process will be for us. Oh, did I also mention to look at the master? Like, there's that full moon above the master's head too, so something to consider. Here you have Jewel. I presume that's the sun and that's the moon, but I don't know. The Dionysian character is the very picture of a whole man, a Zorba the Buddha who can drink wine, dance on the beach and sing in the rain, and at the same time enjoy the depth of understanding and wisdom that belongs to the sage. Yeah, because sometimes we think that, like, if you're a sage, that you can't participate in the human life experience, and that's not true. You know, that's a Christian or a Judaic or a whatever organized religion that you may be familiar with, those are restrictions that have been interpreted through scripture in order to harness us into conformism, in order to control us. No different than government as it stands today, right? In one hand he holds a lotus, showing that he respects and contains within himself the grace of the feminine. His exposed chest and open heart and relaxed belly show that he is at home with his masculinity as well, utterly self-contained. The four elements of earth, fire, and water and sky, all conjunct at the King of Rainbows, who sits atop the book of the wisdom of life. If you are a woman, the King of Rainbows brings the support of your own male energies into your life, a union with the soulmate within. For a man, this card represents a time of breaking through the conventional male stereotype and allowing the fullness of the whole human being to shine forth. Well, that's very binary, isn't it? And in all honesty, I wouldn't really adhere to that, depending on how you feel, but personally, I don't really even think that way. I mean, I understand the delineation of traits designated to masculine and feminine roles in Western culture. Let's be honest, we've transcended that shit. Let's get a little bit more on that so that we can actually move beyond that rather annoying last paragraph. In the East, people have condemned the body, condemned matter, called matter illusory, Maya. It does not really exist, it only appears to exist. It is made of the same stuff as dreams are made of. They denied the world, and that is the reason for the East remaining poor, sick, and in starvation. Interesting that he brings up that cultural dynamic. Half of humanity has been accepting the inner world but denying the outer world. The other half of humanity has been accepting the material world and denying the inner world. Both are half, and no man who is half can be contented. You have to be whole, rich in the body, rich in science, rich in meditation, rich in consciousness. Only a whole person is a holy person, according to me. I want Zorba and Buddha to meet together. Zorba alone is hollow. His dance has not an eternal significance, it is a momentary pleasure. Soon he will be tired of it. Unless you have inexhaustible sources available to you from the cosmos itself, unless you become existential, you cannot become whole. This is my contribution to humanity, the whole person. So, that's a lot for you to take on in a week. But the focus is, how can you be a whole person in every single experience that you are given, that you provide for yourself? It all ties together, and it's some deep, contemplative narratives to contend with there. So try to get some rest so that you're able to do all of that, because that's a big task at hand. On that note, I wish you a glorious week ahead. I hope that you have many blessings. I hope you experience lots of serendipitous moments of clarity, enlightenment, love, joy, whatever it takes. Cheers and namaste.